Hello and welcome to the Take Action on Radon discussion on reducing radon. We are glad that you joined us today, and we will take a little bit to do a little bit of orientation now as people join in, but really thankful for those that have joined us. So the radon reduction webinar really is intended to give people quite an opportunity to ask questions about radon and reducing radon. So we do want it to be interactive. So there is a Q&A bar on your Zoom bar. Feel free to put in questions there if you have them. We did get a number of questions from you ahead of time, so really thankful for all the questions that were submitted. So we will walk through those questions as well, but we also want to make sure we give chance for you to ask questions live here as well. We'll start with a little bit of an overview just to answer, kind of just give everybody a reminder of some of the basic information or give highlights to some of the basic information, and then we'll start to dig into some of the questions. All right, so just a little bit of Zoom orientation. We can't see you or hear you because we're running this in webinar mode. So the only way that we can get any information from you is if you use the Q&A or the chat. So feel free to chat at us and say hi, or if that's more comfortable for you to ask questions. But if we get a lot of questions, it's always useful to have the questions in the Q&A, so you can use the Q&A button. All right, and we will get started. We're taking, this will be about an hour time, and we are recording it. So we will share a recording out afterwards, as well as we will add some of these answers to our website, to the FAQ section of our website. So if we don't get to all the questions today, we will make sure that we follow up with that as well. All right, so we're going to get started. So radon is linked to lung cancer. It's the #1 cause of lung cancer in people who don't smoke, and it is a contributing factor to people who do have a smoking history. And radon is a risk because it is a gas, and when we breathe it in, radon is radioactive, which means it spontaneously decays. And then also it's not just radon, but then it decays, and there's, further decay products that also decay and release energy that are also gas or particle form. So as if they're in our lungs, as that decay is happening, it can cause damage to the lung tissue, which can increase the risk of lung cancer. So radon comes from the soil. Uranium is in our soil and in various amounts and various ways all across the country. So there's certainly parts of our country where there is rock and you know that there's uranium there. And there's other parts of the country that have silt and small amounts, but we are seeing that it is all across our country. And so uranium is a solid, it stays in the ground, but eventually it decays into radon. Radon is a gas, it moves up out of the ground, and it's in the air around us at low levels. But the concern is that the more that we're exposed to, the longer that we're exposed to it, it increases the risk of lung cancer. So it can enter any building that has contact with the ground, so a home or public building. Also, it can enter it's not just a basement issue, so your house may not have a basement, but any house that has contact with the ground can have the potential to have radon. Really anything that sits on the ground, the air can move up into the building. So any building can have it. It will move in through cracks or openings, but they can be really small. So it doesn't mean that you can see them or they can be hidden behind the wall, but there does need to be an opening for it to move through. But sometimes they're obvious, sumps and holes and drains. Some are not obvious, maybe small cracks or cracks hidden behind the walls that you can't see. So generally there does need to be a mechanism for it to move in. It is generally highest in the basement, but that doesn't mean it isn't elevated in the other floors. So it, could be highest in the basement, but it still could be above 200 in the main and upper floors. So it is important to test for radon. And then the risk increases as it goes up. So in Canada, we talk about a 200 becquerel, and that's our action level. Health Canada wants all homes to test and reduce if the levels are above 200. And that's generally because that's the level they said is an unacceptable risk. But it doesn't mean it isn't a risk below that 200 level. And so as you can see in this chart, the risk decreases as the radon level decreases. And this is a lifetime risk, so it's not a 1-year risk. This chart is based on the lifetime exposure risk, but it does increase as radon levels increase. And then you can also see that if there is a smoking history, then your risk is also greater and also increases as the radon level increases. All right, so we get our guidance from Health Canada. As I mentioned, Health Canada recommends that if you test and your levels are above 200, that you mitigate to levels below that, and that you do it to as low as possible. So really not to just dip it under 200, but if you're going to take action, try and take some action to reduce it to as low as possible. And really within 1 year is their guidance timeline. Okay, so a quick overview, and then we'll move into some of the questions because we have received quite a few questions, which is great. But the most effective way to reduce radon is through a radon mitigation system. And a radon mitigation works in such a way that it provides a pathway for the gas to go up and out of the house. So this is a really simplified drawing, but it would be installed with a pipe, and the pipe goes down into the subslab space. And that's obvious, that's where the gas exists. And so we want to draw or create a pathway for the gas to move up and through this pipe instead of coming through the cracks in your home or openings in your building. And then to help this, there's a fan that's added to the pipe system so that it helps move the air through this pipe. And then it discharges outside where it dissipates to quite low levels. And it does need to be installed in such a way that the discharge point, there's clearances so that it's not being drawn back into your home or building. And then it also needs to be installed in such a way that there's, open space or void here so that there can be some air movement. So this might be a hole, or in newer homes, we have kind of a granular layer under the slab of the house. So that provides a little bit of an air gap. Sometimes there's piping in the new homes too. So that can also assist with that air movement. And then also ideally there would be a well-sealed membrane or foundation so that the location where it's drawing the air is more effective, so that the fan can be, move less or work hard less hard, so that uses less energy. Then we'd want a really well-sealed foundation. And then the other benefit of that is it doesn't draw the conditioned air down. So we don't want to waste your conditioned air. We don't want any risk of backdrafting if there's any spillage appliances in the house. So those are other reasons why it's good to have a well-sealed foundation. So we've got a few pictures here that I'll put up of some mitigation systems. So here's one that you can see it's installed in an, out of the way spot in the house. Goes up and out. The fan is in the basement space, and the pipe is well stabilized so that to limit any vibration, and that'll help make it a nice, really quiet system. And then it's piped up and then out of the house. And so here's an example of a discharge pipe that you might see at the side of your house once it's installed. So it doesn't need to be a long discharge at the side of the house. And it also doesn't need to be installed in the middle of the house. So like I said, if we can get a really well sealed foundation, it can draw air from the full footprint of the home. And then here's another couple pictures. Okay, so I'm going to dig into to some of the questions that we've got. I'm going to start with, we did end up getting a couple questions about testing. So I'll start with those. Where can I get a radon test kit? And so I am going to draw your attention to two websites on our Take Action on Radon website. We do have a list of places that sell test kits. And so you can go to our website and you can find a list of providers to purchase. So on the Take Action on Radon website, if you click on this Buy Your Test Kit, you can find a list of various test kits. And these, there's quite a few retailers across the country. And if you want to try to check out a full list, you can keep refreshing because we've sort of randomly assigned this list. But if you keep refreshing it, you'll get different providers. If you want to look in your province, you can click on your province and find a list of test kit providers that are located within your province. So that's another way that you can search. And then the other thing I'll bring note of is that if you are looking for different test kits, there's a couple different ones to purchase. There is a do-it-yourself kit, one-use kit, and that you can purchase. They will send it to you. You put it in place, leave it for the 91 days, and then send it away to a lab. But there's also digital monitors that you can purchase. And so if you go to the CNRPP website, you can find a consumer report on the electronic monitors. This has a list of devices that we recommend. Here you can see the green checks. And then if you keep scrolling down, you'll find a list of ones that we do not recommend. So there, you can see there's a long list of those that we already have on this list. Typically what we're seeing is these online retailers are selling a product, getting bad reviews or getting recalled. Then they rebox it, put a different name on it, and are reselling it. So if you don't see it on our approved list, I would be cautious about buying it, even if it's not on this list at all. But this list was put together to help you with buying them. And these are available from that list of retailers that we mentioned. Many of those also sell the electronic detectors. You can also get these from some of the bigger box stores like Canadian Tire or Best Buy. So you can check those out too, but just make sure you buy them. I will say I've been getting a lot of phone calls from people who have bought, I guess there's Amazon stores now where you can go and buy products that Amazon sells, and they're selling a lot of the unlisted detectors in those stores, it seems, because I've had at least 5 different conversations now with different people in different parts of the country who have purchased from these big box store or these Amazon stores that seem to go by different names, but they're not recommended. So. Okay, so that's one question about a kit.
The question just that's coming in while you're talking about testing, Pam, is can you just remind people at what level Health Canada recommends radon mitigation?
Yeah. So Health Canada recommends mitigation at 200 becquerels. 200 becquerels per meter cubed or above. And then with that recommendation, they recommend that you take action within 1 year. And so on your radon test report, there should be a number. It should list your name and contact information, but it also should list your radon level, as well as the duration of the test, the start and the end dates. And so if your number is above that, then you can take action. If you're using a digital monitor, then that would be based on the long-term average. So you may see that your numbers will go up and down, but regardless of the type of monitor, there should be a way. Some of them you have to connect them to your smartphone in order to get the long-term average. Some of them has a display and it has the long-term average on there. So it would be, if the long-term average is above 200, then you should consider mitigating. Good. Thanks, Erin. Okay, and then I think another question about should I mitigate at 100? There's a number of questions about I'm at 212 or 215 or 230 or 190. So we got a number of questions kind of about the different radon levels and at what point do we mitigate. And so that's why we put this this chart up because it is sort of intended to give you the information so that you can make the decision. So Health Canada has given the estimate at 200. That's simply because they needed to provide a number to give guidance.
Mm. We are,
But,
sorry, we're not seeing the chart. We're
oh,
still
okay.
looking at the device listing.
Yeah, thanks. There we go. And we'll just stop and share again because it's not working for me for some reason. There we go. How about now?
I think it's there. Yes, perfect.
Perfect. Good. Okay, so yeah, that's why we put these numbers together because at 200 is what Health Canada recommended. But if you've got smokers in the house, obviously the risk is greater for somebody who has a smoking history. You may want to reduce it lower. If you've got other people that maybe have other lung health issues, already sensitive, there's not necessarily any evidence at this point that there's a greater risk for them to lung cancer. But, those are considerations to you think that you should be thinking about, or other, cancer in the family. Also, those are sorts of things, family histories that you may want to consider. So there certainly are reasons why you may want to take action at a lower level. Another thing to consider are the different recommendations. So in the US, they recommend taking action at about 150. So they use a different unit, but it's equivalent to about 150 becquerels. The World Health Organization has recommended that nations set guidance at between 1 and 300. So the World Health Organizations, would like nations that have the capacity to have a lower level that they would consider setting it at that. So that's another thing to consider. All right, Erin, I'll get you to jump in if you've got another question, and I'll pick another one about, one more question that I had about testing was about, they had tested a few years ago, and so should they take action based on that test or test again? And so I'll just say that Health Canada hasn't been clear about their recommendation of repeat testing, but there is good reason why you might want to consider testing again every 5 years, because radon levels can change. So if you did test and their levels were low, you might want to test again just to make sure they're still low. But if you tested 5 years ago and your levels were high, you may just want to move towards taking action on that. You certainly can, test again, but you might want to reach out to a mitigation professional and start moving forward on action based on an older test. And yeah.
Okay, another excellent question on the subject of testing is someone says he can find out in a week if there's radon in my house. Is that possible? I had only heard about months-long testing.
Yeah, well, with the emergence of these digital devices, it certainly is possible to find your radon level faster. There are professional level devices as well, so you can use a professional electronic radon monitor or a consumer grade electronic monitor, or there are short-term tests out there that will do shorter tests. So first of all, our recommendation is to test for 3 months. And the reason that we do recommend longer term testing is because the levels can change. So it is a gas, and the gas can come in more, some times of day, or depending on how the house is used, or depending on how the weather outside can change the levels. So they can change even throughout the day, but certainly, day by day, they can go up and down. And so if you test at the wrong moment, you might just get a snapshot that, doesn't represent what your annual average is going to be. So more data is better. But then also the digital devices, the consumer grade digital devices. So as I said, Health Canada recommends testing for 3 months. If you look at the manufacturer's quality claims on the digital devices, they are often based on 30 days of testing. So if you talk to the manufacturers, they really say, well, they should be used for at least 30 days. And then when we do research on the devices, so with CNRPP, we do research on these digital devices. We don't research them for even less than 7 days. So we always make sure we have at least 7 days of data. And that's what we base our estimates on. So we don't recommend anybody using them for less than 7 days because there's just not enough data collected for it to give a good analysis of the data it has. So yeah, you can test for less than 7 days, but we don't recommend it. And then there are some short-term devices, liquid scintillation devices that you can buy at some of the hardware stores. Um, they are 48 hours, I believe, 48 hours to 4 days. The challenge with using those in Canada is they are not very accurate. They need to get to the lab really quickly, so you need to courier them. You need to get them to the lab on a day where they're going to analyze them. So if they happen to arrive, Friday, they may not get analyzed until Monday. And the longer they wait between analysis, the less accurate they are. So we do not recommend purchasing short-term tests from the big box stores. And again, we recommend doing the long-term tests.
Wonderful. A couple of other questions while we're still talking about testing. So one is a simple one. Should you use your air exchanger while testing?
Yeah, so we do recommend testing as you use your home. So, and first of all, an air exchanger doesn't um, limit the radon level, so it doesn't filter out radon, so it won't impact the radon levels anyways. But it could be a heat recovery ventilator or an ERV, or however you use your home normally. That's how you should operate it while you're testing. Ideally, we do recommend testing during the winter because that's typically when the windows are closed. But we do hear some people talk about opening their windows, and uh, and so if you live with your window cracked open, maybe you open your bedroom even through the coldest winter, then test during that time. But just know that it will impact the radon levels. So it may not be reflective of the future occupants in your home, if that's how you tested, or it may not be reflective of, a time when you're living in the house where you don't open the windows. So keep that in mind as well.
Okay. And then the idea of retesting. So we have a couple of questions. One, they're planning some renovations in the basement, and they're wondering whether to test now or test after those renovations. And then on a similar front, some people had tested, got a slightly high result, and did a little sealing, and they're wondering what they should do now.
Yeah. And so if you've taken some actions, and maybe I'll tie this in, there is one question about simple things that you can do to try and reduce your radon level. And so if you've got a digital monitor, it is helpful with being able to monitor what your radon levels are if you do make some changes to it. And so again, I'll just repeat the fact that they're not meant for quick changes. So let's say you do some sealing and you want to know if that has an impact. You may need to reset the monitor. So if it's a digital monitor that just has a display on it, you're going to have to reset it so you get some new data. Make sure you test for at least 7 days to get a picture of what the radon level is. Keep in mind that as the temperature goes up, the environmental factors may also affect your radon levels. So even if you sealed and then now it suddenly is warm outside, there could be two factors that are influencing those data. But yeah, if you do some measures, then I recommend retesting for a good portion of time before you decide if that's been effective. Other things that you can do is if you have a heat recovery ventilator, an HRV or an ERV already installed in the house, then you may want to clean the filters. So if you tested and your levels were high, clean the filters, make sure that HRV is balanced, and then retest your radon again. And again, if you do have an HRV installed in the house, you may want to purchase a radon monitor, an electronic radon monitor, because as those filters get clogged, they get out of balance, it could increase the radon level. So that radon monitor will alert you to some of those factors. Any other thoughts on that question that maybe I haven't answered, Erin?
No, I think that answers it for now. So I think we can move on from sort of the testing aspect
Yeah.
and into maybe the first stages of mitigation. So we've got lots of questions that you presented already, our sub-slab depressurization system. That's what we're looking at a photo of there on the left. Are there other options? We've got quite a few questions about other options, low-cost options, DIY options.
Yeah. So there are ways to fix it yourself, but we're always cautious to say we don't know what your capacity is, so to be careful about it. But there are companies that do sell DIY kits of the pipe and the fan. There is a CGSB standard online that walks you through how to install the technical specs of installation. But a couple key things to consider. One is that once you start drilling holes through the ground, now you're opening it up a little bit and drawing air in. That will be higher radon levels, so make sure you ventilate and protect yourself. Make sure that you use the proper pipes. So the other thing is it should be a thick wall Schedule 40 pipe, so it should be properly installed. Some jurisdictions do require permits, so you may want to watch for that. You want to make sure that there's good sealing because you don't want to depressurize the house. So if you're drawing air down, there is a risk that you could be drawing conditioned air and depressurizing the house, which could impact carbon monoxide and such levels. So those are sort of some of the things to consider. So we're cautionary to say, we recommend hiring a professional, but there's certainly things that you can do if you're handy and you want to try doing it yourself. And then the other caution I would say is think about the retail. So if you install a mitigation system, make sure it's done in such a way that's not going to negatively impact when you want to go and sell your house. We sell this as a feature that once you have mitigated your house, if you've got a really well properly installed mitigation system, then it now shows that you have addressed the radon, where a house that doesn't have radon tests or isn't mitigated, the purchaser doesn't know whether they're going to eventually have to pay for a mitigation system. So consider that also when you're doing a do-it-yourself house, install, that you want to make sure it meets codes and that it will, be good for resale as well. All right. Another question about some professionals do a test depressurization, or sorry, a test feasibility test first, or a communication test, and some don't. And so that is on our website, on the CNRPP website. We do have a list of questions to ask, and some of them are about this communication test. And so when professionals go in to install a mitigation system, they should be doing some type of additional tests as part of their system design. So they should drill a couple holes in the far points of the slab. They should do some air pressure measurements. So they should have a micromanometer that they're using to measure the airflows. And then those measurements will give them a couple pieces of information. One, it will tell them if the mitigation system is going to work, and then also information about how much air they need to draw. So how big this fan needs to be in order to make sure that they're drawing air from the full footprint of the slab. And then if they find that they need to draw a lot of air, then that means they don't necessarily always need a big fan. Sometimes they can do some troubleshooting, and there's ways that they can improve the foundation or the subslab space so that this pickup point can work more effectively and they can put in a better sized fan. So we recommend that if they aren't doing that, then you question why they aren't. It's possible that they won't do that until they're ready to install the system. So, different models of business, some will quote on a system before they have kind of all the information, just because the travel maybe is hard to fit it in, and they'll give you an estimate. And then once they get on site, they'll be able to do some more diagnosis and give you a better idea of the path and such. Some of them will ask for pictures ahead of time. So it all just depends on the amount of time and cost to travel in between customers to help them with giving you an estimate as easily as possible.
Okay. So we've got, I don't know if we want to get into, cost. Quite a few questions about cost, which we haven't talked about. So that's a simple one.
Yeah, so between 2018 and 2022, Take Action on Radon did a survey on costs, and we found at that time the average was about 2,800 across the country. But since then, we've definitely seen the costs go up. So I generally would say it's between 3 and 5,000. There are some areas of the country that we're seeing it. In BC, we're seeing it up closer to 5,000. Um, but that gives you a general idea of what you can expect. If your home has crawl space, then it might be more expensive. Crawl spaces involves installing a better membrane, which takes a lot of work hours or man hours. And so that would increase the cost. If you've got a more complicated architecture, that could also increase the costs because they need to figure out a pipe route. The more pipe that is needed, pipe is more expensive and takes time to install. That could impact it. Yeah, and just some of the finishing requirements also might add into the costs. So those are the things that can impact it. Also, we're seeing in some areas of the country, really old homes, stone foundations might be a little bit more complicated. So that might add to the cost because there's more work needed for sealing and that sort of thing. So those can impact. So yeah, hopefully that gives people an idea of the estimate. There are programs available to help with the costs. So if you look at province to province in Ontario, if your home is 7 years old or less, then we do have the Ontario Home Warranty. And so that is an option that you can look into. If you have income, low to moderate income, you may want to look at the Canadian Lung Association. They have a national grant program called Lungs Matter Grant. So you can apply for that. You do need a 91-day test. You need to apply prior to getting or starting any of the mitigation work. And you do need a quote from a CNRPP professional. So that's another program that you can look into. And then another in Manitoba Hydro, you can apply using your hydro loan. So it's not a grant or it's not a subsidy, but you can finance it through Manitoba Hydro and then pay it off on your hydro bill. So that's another funding available.
Okay. So we have a couple of questions about what sort of radon levels people can expect once they have a mitigation system installed in their home. Do you want to touch on that?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Also, as part of our research, we did find that when systems are properly installed by a certified professional, levels are reduced to really low levels. So many of them were under 100. Significant number were even under 50. So they can be reduced to really even high levels down to quite low levels. And Health Canada did research as well, and they found that when it was, so you can kind of look at their stats when it was do-it-yourself sealing, there was sort of some level of reduction. When it was a do-it-yourself mitigation system, a little bit more reduction, but when it was a certified professional, it was over 90% reduction. So really effective reduction. Another question we often get is about installing an HRV to reduce the radon levels. And so that too has some level of reduction, but the way an HRV works, it allows fresh air in, and then takes that same amount of fresh air out. So really that provides a method of dilution. So it reduces it by a percentage, but not to as low as possible. So it can be a tool or a resource in some situations, but really the most effective way to reduce it is through a mitigation system. And I mentioned crawl spaces earlier, and so here's an example of a crawl space install. So having a good membrane installed in the crawl space will help. And then the fan and the pipe can be added. This pipe ties in to another system and then goes up and gets discharged out. All right, Erin, you got another question?
Yeah. Okay. So now at this point, I feel like we are mostly into sort of the more complicated questions. Some people have had experiences with a mitigation professional that maybe didn't work out, or they've just got some questions. So I'll launch into one that we received in our Q&A here. If your perimeter drains go into a sump in the house, are you not creating a pathway for radon gas? And if you install a fan system, are you not just drawing outside perimeter air?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. And um, so just for everybody to understand this, um, typically a sump system is installed in such a way that you've got weeping tile around the perimeter of the house, and that weeping tile is intended to collect water. And then the water and the weeping tile is connected into a sump system so that the water can drain into the sump. And then yeah, the sump can protect the house from elevated water. So uh, in addition to water, this can also collect air. And so if there is an air gap between the weeping tile and the exterior of the house, so whatever that soil type is, or however that soil is packed, and there is an air allowance between the exterior, kind of the above ground air space, through to the weeping tile that goes across the perimeter, then exactly, if you're going to be drawing and you install a mitigation system on the sump system, you can end up drawing air down from the exterior through and in. Um, so that's one thing to be aware of. And that your mitigation professional should be doing proper testing. That all goes into doing some assessments and measurements so that they understand kind of the airflows. Uh, it can, so sometimes the weeping tiles can be an effective way to gather. It does come into the sump pit. So there are times when, everything else is challenging and that is the best option. The other challenges with installing on the sump is that your sump needs to be maintained every once in a while. So you might need to check and make sure your sump is working in the spring, or you might need to open it up and replace the sump. And so if the person replacing the sump doesn't properly seal the piping again once it's back down, you could have problems with your mitigation system. So, there's a challenge with installing those two together. Yeah, and ideally what we would like is for the mitigation system, again, to draw air from the full footprint, so not just from that perimeter space. And so sometimes that can be achieved, but usually it's not our number one recommendation. Usually we recommend installing it separately.
Great. Okay, so yeah, we received very similar question from someone who registered but isn't attending. So they had a local company come by, and that company said they couldn't do their usual mitigation system because of the sump, how it was linked. So I think our suggestion there would be to reach out to another professional. Some of them have more experience. Some of them do end up specializing more in certain types of work, especially the trickier homes that, might be a little more unusual. An easy one, when you install a mitigation system, does it run constantly? What are the noise levels like? They're wondering about basement bedrooms and the noise.
Yeah, those are great questions. So yes, the fan should run continually. So really, ideally, we want it to reduce the radon levels to as low as possible, which means, all throughout the year. So the fan would run continually. Um, and then the mitigation professional should do some measures to make sure that the fan is installed quietly. So if there is a noise level in the system, there are things that they can do. So here you can see some strapping and supports to secure the pipe. This will reduce the vibration in the fan by having it, be more secure. In this previous picture, they look a little bit different, but similar. So this one has just a simpler support where it's being installed. Sometimes if this is installed on certain walls, it can create a little bit of vibration. So sometimes that just means, and that might be why in this picture they used a little bit different style of support to broaden it across. But yeah, so there's different things that they can do. These couplers also are flexible, so they also are intended to minimize vibrations. So that can also reduce the noise. Another way to reduce the noise is to have a smaller fan. So to make sure so sometimes air movement can have noise. So reducing the amount of bends and twists and turns in the system, that can be a way to help reduce air movement noise. To reduce the fan size, so maybe doing more sealing. I know we had one of our training programs in the last couple of years, had a really complicated house that was going to require a lot of effort to seal. So at the course, we ended up having to spend, a full day of getting all the participants working on sealing all the areas of the basement. So that would have been a lot of work if that had been, hired one person to seal. It would have been quite a bit of hours of work. But that meant that we could have a more efficient fan, and then the life of that system was more effective. The fan was, could be a smaller fan, and so less energy and quieter would be too. Sometimes there's a noise at the discharge, and so that's another thing. So that's the noise of that air movement. So all the things that I've mentioned so far into that air movement. But there are things that can be done also at discharge. So making sure it's not installed close to your sitting, but ways to put an end on here to change the noise at discharge also is something that can be done.
Okay. I think we had a slide where you had a list of sort of the questions and the things that your professional should be sort of saying.
Yeah, yeah. So again, to go and find a certified professional, you can go to cnrpp.ca, click Find a Professional. And then, yeah, here is a list of some things of what you can ask a professional. And then also some things about a well-installed system. So did they do sealing around the opening and the foundation? Did they, it discharges properly outside of the house? Is it properly labeled? Did they leave behind some information? So they should give you some documentation about your system so that you have some information as well as future occupants have some information about the system. So that's another thing that they should be doing. Yeah, good. Thanks, Erin.
Yeah. Just touching, so we talked about the standard system. We talked about how sometimes it's a bit more complicated because of the sump and perimeter drain arrangement. So another way, I mean, there's countless ways in which your house could be unique. But one question that we got from a registrant, they said they had a consultant come to their house, and because their basement floor was made of separate cement slabs, the contractor didn't feel capable of installing a system. So they're wondering what they should do. So personally, I would say reach out to another professional. Do you want to expand on that, Pam?
Yeah. Yeah. So if you have multiple slabs, it might be a more complicated system, or it might be that they want to install a system in different timeframes. So maybe install one system, let it run, see what your levels come down at, and then if you've got a different foundation that maybe they want to either install a second system in there or tie into it. That might be an approach that they may want to take. So they could do it all at once, or they could do it in a fix and come back kind of approach. But yeah, if they're not able to have a plan, I mean, ideally we want our mitigation professionals to be able to service every house. And so we do have support for mitigation professionals if they run into a system or a house where it's more complicated and they need support. So they should be able to reach out to our program and connect with others, experts, to be able to, problem solve situations like that. So if they are not a certified professional, you may want to check with a certified professional. If you're not comfortable with the work that you're receiving from one professional, you can certainly reach out to us or reach out to another certified professional.
Great. All right. And then I know we talked about this at the beginning of the presentation, but we do have that risk table based on the different radon levels. So a number of people submitted questions wondering, should they mitigate at 200, at 100, somewhere in between? How bad is the risk if they've been at many times this level for multiple years? So we did have the little table that we showed. And I don't think the person's here today, but hopefully they'll view this recording because we did get a question from someone with quite a high level in BC. And in BC, there's a pilot program. I know we have a slide for it.
Oops.
Yeah, there it is. So yeah, so if you are living in British Columbia and your radon level is above 800 becquerels per meter cubed, there's this wonderful pilot program run through BC Cancer where you could have access to a low-dose CT screening. So this is the type of thing that's used, I believe, on people who have been smoking cigarettes for a long time, for example. The idea is it will give a kind of an advance warning of anything developing in your lungs. So yeah, maybe Pam, you want to expand a bit more?
Yeah, so as you can see on the screen, it is in order to be able to qualify for it, you do need a radon level above 800 in a home that you've lived in a couple of years. So you need to be able to prove with a radon test. It's free. There's two clinics that you can register for it, BC Cancer through BC Cancer. One is the Vancouver location, and then one is Kelowna location. You can register by calling the line there on the screen, so 604-675-8098, or email the Lung Health Study bc@gmail.com. And if you have trouble getting through, reach back out to us. So you can always email us at info@takeactiononradon.ca if you don't hear back from them, but you should be able to reach out and schedule your screening. If your radon level is not 800 and you're sort of still feel that you're high, maybe you're 700 or 600, they will consider you. So I would say, if you feel like your radon levels are high and you're concerned about your health and the health of your family, and this applies obviously to all occupants of the house, I would reach out to them and ask them for consideration. They haven't, they set a guidance of the 800, but sounds like they haven't been declining people at some of the levels below that. So I would reach out to them and let them make a judgment call.
Great. Okay, personally, that's all the questions that I see that were submitted when people registered or that we've received during the webinar. So if you're waiting for your question to be answered, please type it in now because I don't see it anywhere else. I feel like we've covered a good amount of ground.
Yep. Yeah, and so just two more points that I was going to talk about. So back to your radon test. Some of the times we had people not really understanding their radon report. So we have some examples of some different reports on the screen. You can see they're just sample numbers, but in some of them it's the test result number. So this is where you would find your radon number. This would be in the place, and then on this report it would be here. Now, on this report, you can see there's a plus or minus number. And so it is a lab report. And so labs are required to disclose their margin of error. And so different reports will show the margin of error in different ways. So this is an example where they show the numbers all in one sort of space. And so we do sometimes get questions, well, if I've got an radon test of 180 plus or minus maybe 25 becquerels, then how do I make a decision? But the number that they have declared as your radon result is the decision-making number. So the margin of error is helpful to understand that, hey, it could be higher or lower, but really if you're trying to figure out which number to use to base a decision, the recommendation is to use the reported number. So that's one about kind of where to find the numbers. There is other labs out there with different types of reports. Sometimes they are more technical and they kind of hide them. You can certainly reach out to the lab and say, hey, look, I don't understand how to read this report. You can certainly reach out to us and we can help you because, ideally we want you to be able to make an informed decision. So certainly share that report with us and we can help you kind of sort that out. But that's one decision that one question we often get to about the lab reports. I do have, there was one other question that I saw earlier that was sent to me about post testing. So yeah, if you do any work, I mean, we talked about the do it yourself, you obviously should test after it, but if you have had any mitigation work done, the certified professional really is responsible to do short-term testing after the mitigation system is installed. So to ensure that either you've got an electronic monitor in place to monitor the radon levels. So ideally the fan, it would be turned on for 24 hours and then a test would start, or if it's ongoing, that you would kind of reset if need be, at least 24 hours after the fan is ongoing. And then you would have a test after that. And then that there would be a follow-up long-term test during the winter. So again, if they do a professional monitoring for a short period of time, just to say, yes, this is effective, then you would need to make sure that you do another follow-up long-term test in the winter. If you have an electronic monitor, then you can just have it in place and keep monitoring it year round. But you do need to make sure you test after any mitigation work. And then you may want to also, if you don't have an electronic monitor where you're constantly monitoring and you just do one long-term test after the mitigation, then the recommendation is that you test every 5 years if you have a mitigation system installed, just to make sure it's continuing to reduce your radon levels. Good. All right. Any more questions?
Yes, we received one other question. If you have multiple additions with basements of various heights, would each section need mitigation?
It might or it might not. Yeah. So there has been homes that have been able to be installed with one system and has been able to be effective in reducing the radon level from one pickup point. But yeah, I mean, it's certainly reasonable to think if there's multiple levels of foundation that there may need to be. So, I mean, just to quickly picture the mitigation system, we're trying to draw air from the footprint of the home. So often the lowest foundation would be the primary spot for assessment of a mitigation system. There could be reasons why that isn't going to be an effective location, so they may pick a different, foundation. But ultimately they want to draw air kind of under the full footprint of the home somehow. So it could be done with one mitigation system, but it might need multiple pickup points or multiple systems.
Okay, I don't see any other questions. Oh, wait. Can you provide a list of recommended digital testers in the comment section?
Yeah.
Yes, so it'll be the link to our consumer report on the digital radon monitors, the electronic radon monitors that we call them now. And we do update this we update it annually or more than annually because Health Canada is constantly testing the new devices that they can purchase online. And getting as soon as issues are reported with them and recalls are reported, we update our online listing.
There you go. So I put the link in the chat, and then we will send out some support information. So we will email out a follow-up email with to make sure you've got the recording and some links as well.
Wonderful. That's all that I see on this side.
Good. Yeah, I think I've gone through the list of questions and we've covered the pre-submitted questions. So yeah, thank you. We really appreciate, we will do another webinar in a month. So for some reason, if we didn't answer your questions, feel free to join us again, but hopefully you'll share this information with your community. We do want to encourage you. Radon is still emerging, so people don't know about it. So we do need help. Please share out information with your friends and family about radon. Feel free to contact your local representatives, your municipality or your MLA or your provincial representative or your MP or federal representative, and find out what they're doing to help raise awareness in their communities about radon. That would help support us as well. All right, well, thank you very much for taking time to join us today. We hope that it's been helpful, and we really appreciate your time. And Erin, thanks for joining me. All right.
My pleasure. Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.